Good morning, everyone. So I'm assuming that there's not going to be too many people that are going to be able to join me during the actual live video. But my hope is that this will add a lot of value to you on replay. So every week, I'm going to try to jump in here and answer questions that I get either via DM or in my email inbox. And I get probably a couple dozen questions a month, and some of them are really good, and I do try to answer them all. And so I just want to make sure that everyone gets to benefit from the answers that I give people. So this week, since we're just getting started, I'm going to do two questions actually. So number one, I got asked what my approach was to SIBO. And then number two, I was asked, how do you know that you're eating the optimal amount of calories? So just kind of kicking things off with answering those two questions this week. But every week after this, I'll just be answering typically like one question because I don't want these to get too long. So let me know if you have questions that you want me to answer. And you've been doing a great job of that, but I'm going to start answering them like this for everyone. So number one, my approach to SIBO. So first of all, what is SIBO? SIBO is an acronym, and it stands for Small Intestinal Bacterial Overgrowth, SIBO. And symptoms of SIBO are typically just like crappy digestion, like heartburn, gas, bloating. That's a really common one. I get like a lot of women in my practice that say that they're bloating, to the point of like being almost looking 2 to 3 months pregnant. So like extreme bloating sometimes, diarrhea, constipation, it's all just crap. So my approach is different with every client. Obviously, everybody is unique, and there's so many things that can contribute to SIBO. So it's really important to pick apart what the root cause might be and not just chase down those symptoms. So at a really high level, what I like to focus on is number one, optimizing digestion. So it's very common to have low gastric secretions. So low stomach acid, that is a big one. And that can happen so many different ways. People that have been on PPIs, proton pump inhibitors, for a long time are going to have low stomach acid. People who are really stressed out, if you're stressed, then your gastric secretions go way down because then you're in that flight or fight mode and not in that rest and digest mode. Something I've also seen with the low stomach acid is something called H. pylori infections. That's a kind of bacteria that's typically associated with ulcers. And what happens is that H. pylori actually favors a low stomach acid environment. And they're really sneaky because they actually perpetuate that environment. They keep your stomach acid low so that they can continue to thrive there. So sometimes we have to do a little bit of like antibacterial, antimicrobial to address that H. pylori infection in order to get the stomach acid levels back up and resolve that SIBO. Low pancreatic enzymes are common. That's what you need to, digest proteins, fats, and carbs. So your pancreas isn't just responsible for insulin, it's also responsible for those enzymes. I also see stagnant bile flow or clients who have had their gallbladder removed. If you don't have a gallbladder, you don't have bile, which means that you're not going to be able to digest and absorb fats really hardly at all, maybe without supplementation. So those can be some of the low gastric secretions I'm looking for, and then reducing gut inflammation, maybe doing some healing of the gut lining. There's a lot of things that I like to do with that. And I would just refer you to my leaky gut support pack that I have on my products page on my website that has some of my top picks for healing leaky gut and restoring the lining of the gut. So number one, optimizing digestion. Number two, improving gut motility. So this is really important for SIBO because often people that have SIBO have low gut motility. So motility basically is just talking about how quickly food moves through your digestive system. So your gut has muscles that push food along using small contractions called peristalsis, and that motility can be altered by low thyroid, which is super common in my practice, metabolic disorders, of which I would include, not just, maybe someone who has trouble managing their glucose levels, maybe having elevated fasting glucose or glycated hemoglobin. But also maybe people like with really high cholesterol and triglycerides, and possibly even PCOS in that metabolic disorder category. But Low motility can also be due to mold toxicity if you're sensitive to mold, or if you have heavy metals, which I've been talking a little bit more about that recently, because I recently found out that I have high aluminum levels, as well as like kind of high cadmium and arsenic. So I'll be talking more about my approach to heavy metal detoxes in coming weeks, but that's something that can really reduce gut motility and make you more sensitive to maybe acquiring SIBO. Third, so this is the one that people usually are like waiting for me to say, like, what are you going to do about the bacterial cultures that have overgrown? Like, how do you reduce those? So those first two steps are really important, but then I respond directly to the gut dysbiosis, typically with an herbal, antibacterial, antifungal, antiparasitic supplement, usually alongside something that's called a biofilm disruptor. And what that is it's something that makes the bacteria more vulnerable to the herbal supplements. So it kind of like just punctures holes in the bacteria and allows the antibacterial herbals botanicals to do what it is that they're designed to do. I also like to use something called a soil-based organism probiotic that contains bacteria species from the bacilli family. These help bring balance to the gut by essentially leveling out the populations that are present, not letting any one species become overly predominant. So that's at a really high level how I like to approach SIBO. So the second question that I got this week is, how many calories should I eat? So first we need to talk about what calories are and what they are not. They are simply a unit of measure that we've used for a long time to describe how much energy can be derived from the foods that we eat. Calories do not take into account the quality. It's simply a quantitative measure. Calories do not take into account bioindividuality, which is the uniqueness that is you. So we know that your genes play a role, your hormone status, your environment, like toxins, or maybe even your mental state. And maybe the most important part of your bioindividuality is your gut. So, for example, we know that children that were born via cesarean section who weren't able to get that first, dose of good bacteria, being shoved out of the vaginal canal, they're actually much more likely to be obese later in life. And that's not all just based on behavior. A lot of that has to do with the gut environment that they have that's interacting with the calories that they eat. So before I get into the formula that I use, I just want to get on a soapbox for just 1 second. So I will never, ever offer weight loss in my services, because I feel personally that this perpetuates a toxic diet culture that teaches women to be dissatisfied with her body. It's that dissatisfaction that has been ingrained in women since they were little that keeps the money flowing to the brands that tell women that they are less than if they can't meet the arbitrary standards of what someone considers optimal female beauty. So it's just icky, and I just avoid it altogether. What I'm really interested in doing in my practice is finding the root cause of inflammation and really just elevating and optimizing your wellness. If you lose weight as a byproduct of that, that's wonderful, but I'm not going to target that and perpetuate that toxic body image. Blech. All right, done with the soapbox thing. So I do still talk about calories in my practice because there isn't really an alternative, to be honest. It's something that's accessible, and it adds a lot of clarity to the dietary suggestions that I give my people. So in my practice, it's kind of funny because what I see more often than not is women who are under eating but still think they need to cut back on foods because they aren't achieving weight loss. It's so funny because these clients are often, struggling with a lot of inflammation and hormone issues that are actually being made worse by their habits of, overtraining, undersleeping, and undereating. It's a really tough sell for sure, because I think a lot of people expect to meet with me and be told that they need to cut way back on the food and, way increase strenuous activity. I definitely have seen a lot of blank stares when I say you need to stop doing HIIT workouts and focus on weightlifting or yoga. And I want you to add 200 calories a day to your diet. There's just a lot of crickets. Like, what are you talking about, Britt? Have you totally lost your mind? I know it sounds crazy. I know it does. But weight loss is not calories in, calories out. And this is highly controversial. I know that this is going to generate a lot of comments, even from colleagues of mine. So I'm definitely willing to talk about it more deeply if there's interest there. Okay, I'm going to take a quick drink of water, but there's a formula that I like to use to calculate the approximate number of calories I'd like my female clients to consume. And it's kind of a long formula, so I'm going to be posting it in the comments to this live video. And then I'm also planning on writing a blog post about this soon, so stay tuned for that. One second. Okay. I won't even bother to read you this formula because it'll just sound like high school algebra all over again, but I will take you through using me as an example. So number one, what you do is you multiply your weight in kilograms, okay, by 10. So I used a Google calculator to convert my weight in pounds, which is 165 pounds, to kilograms. So that means that I weigh 74.8 kilograms. And then I multiply that by 10, so the number I get is 748. Now you take your height in centimeters and you multiply that by 6.25. So again, I used a Google calculator and I converted my height of 6'1" to centimeters, 185.4 centimeters. I multiplied that by 6.25 and that was 1,158.8. So I take that 1,158 and I'm going to add that to my number above where I use the kilograms. So 748 plus 1,158 is about 1,900. So then you take your age, so I'm 31, and I multiply that by 5. And so 31 times 5 is 155, and you subtract 161 from that. I told you guys this is a long formula. I promise it'll make more sense when you see it. So I took 155 minus 161, got me -6. So that 1900-ish calories that or 1900-ish number that I calculated above, 1907, I subtract I take away the -6 from that. So 1907 plus a -6 is 1,901 calories, and that is my baseline, low, bottom, very least amount of calories that I need. The bottom line, your calorie consumption should not drop below this. So even if my goal were weight loss, I would not go below the 1900, 1901. If you are working out, which a lot of people are, if you were working out, then on days you're training, you're going to have to add calories to that. Typically for a normal gym workout where you'd be doing some, like light jogging or like brisk walking and then go do some weight training, you might be breaking a little sweat. I would estimate you need to add another 200 calories onto your baseline just on the days that you're doing that, not every single day. So, if you're working out 3 days a week, on those 3 days that you're working out, add the 200 calories. If you're doing something like CrossFit, and I know there's a number of CrossFit people in here, then it's possible that you need to be getting another 400 calories or more on those days. Same if you're doing HIIT, but I mean, CrossFit is like especially strenuous. So what happens if you don't do this? Like, what happens if you're like, no, Britt, I want to lose weight. I'm going to eat 1,500 calories a day. Even though that's 400, calories below my baseline, what will happen? I will tell you that I work with numerous women who are eating healthy. They're eating so healthy. They look around at their coworkers and they're like, okay, so my coworker over there is eating White Castle and she's super skinny. And here I am eating my salad with tuna on it and I can't seem to drop a single pound. In fact, I might even be gaining weight. And they're working out and they can't lose weight. Maybe they're even gaining weight. Their hormones are wrecked. Their periods are a disaster. They're tired all the time. Their hair is falling out. They have joint pain. They're always getting sick. You get the idea. This is, maybe just one picture of the consequences that can come from that under eating. So I would encourage you to eat what I'd like to say is more better. So eat the appropriate calorie amount, which could be more than what you're eating now. and do better, eat more quality, less refined carbs, less bread, less pasta, less white rice, less potato, and try to focus on healthy fats and proteins, that grass-fed beef or free-range chicken or, farm fresh eggs and ghee and avocado and coconut oil. Try to focus on those things. Accent with fruit, accent with starchy veggies, and your calories may become less important, because you're really focusing on the calories or on the quantity, I mean. So that's at a high level, what my advice is. I would use that formula, honestly, to check in. Maybe track your diet for a couple days, see how many calories you're eating, see how far above or below that baseline that we're calculating you are, and then make some adjustments, and then maybe do it again in a couple weeks and just check in to see where you're at. So that's what I have for you for this week's Q&A. But let me know if you want more information on anything that I talked about today, or if you want me to talk about another question next week. So I'm always looking for great suggestions. So be sure to either comment, send me a direct message, or send me an email anytime. Okay, talk to you later.